She stood outside the iron gate of a mansion that once called her. Not good enough. Rain was falling softly. Her hair was wet. Her hands were cold, but her eyes were calm. Too calm for someone who had been thrown out of this house 5 years ago with nothing but one bag and a broken heart. Inside that mansion, a family was preparing for the biggest business deal of their lives. Champagne glasses were being polished. A banner with golden letters was being hung. Welcome our new investor. They had no idea who that investor was. They had no idea that in a few hours, the woman they once called a burden, a mistake, and someone who doesn't belong in this family, was about to walk through their front door, not as a beggar this time, but as the one holding their future in her hands. If you have ever been made to feel small by people who were supposed to love you, if you have ever been told you are not enough by the very people who should have stood by you, this story is for you. Because sometimes, life doesn't just give you a second chance. Sometimes, it gives you the exact moment you needed the moment, where the people who broke you have to look you in the eye and realize how wrong they were. Stay with me till the end, because what happens in this house tonight will remind you of one truth. Never underestimate the person you underestimated. This is the story of Mira. Tia Geraldobecho Moksherias Nivar Inojic. Mira grew up in a small town, in a small house, with a mother who worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. Her father had passed away when she was only 7 years old, leaving behind nothing but a photograph and a lot of unpaid bills. But Mira's mother, Sunita, never let her daughter feel poor in spirit, even when they were poor in money. Every night, no matter how tired she was, Sunita would sit beside Mira and say the same words. May not have much, my child, but we have our dignity. Never let anyone take that from you. Amira held on to those words like a treasure. She studied hard. She worked part-time jobs from the age of 16, tutoring younger kids, waitressing on weekends, saving every rupee she could. By the time she reached college, she had already learned something most people take years to understand, that hard work, patience, and quiet strength can carry you further than any amount of money. It was in her final year of college that she met Arjun. Arjun was different from the other rich boys on campus. He didn't care about brands or big cars. He noticed Mira not because she was loud or flashy, but because she was the girl who stayed back after class to help other students who were struggling. He noticed her kindness first long before he noticed anything else. They became friends. Then something more. For almost 2 years, Arjun and Mira built a bond so strong that nothing seemed like it could break it. He would tell her about his family's business, one of the biggest textile empires in the state, and she would tell him about her dreams of becoming a successful entrepreneur one day. He believed in her. She believed in him. But there was one thing Arjun never told his family about her. He knew exactly how his mother, Kamla Devi, felt about outsiders marrying into their family, especially outsiders who didn't come from money. Kamla Devi had built the family's image around one single idea: status. To her, a daughter-in-law wasn't a partner for her son. She was a decoration for the family name. When Arjun finally gathered the courage to tell his mother that he wanted to marry Mira, the room went silent for a long moment. Then Kamla Devi laughed. Not a warm laugh. A cold, sharp laugh that cut through the air like a blade. A girl who tutors children for pocket money. You want to bring her into this house? Do you know what people will say? Arjun tried to explain that Mira was kind, intelligent, and hardworking, that she had more character than half the wealthy families they knew. But Kamla Devi wasn't listening. To her, none of that mattered. What mattered was appearances. What mattered was what society would think. Arjun's father, Ram Mohan, was a quieter man. He didn't say much. But there was something in his eyes, a flicker of respect, when he first met Mira at a small family gathering months later. He saw the way she carried herself, humble, polite, never trying too hard to impress anyone. But in that house, his opinion rarely mattered. Kamladevi ran the household with an iron grip, and everyone knew it. Despite his mother's disapproval, Arjun refused to back down. He loved Meera, and he was determined to marry her. After months of arguments, tears, and threats, Kamladevi finally gave in, but not out of love. She agreed to the marriage, because she didn't want to lose control over her son completely. She thought, "Let her come into this house. I will show her exactly where she stands." And that is exactly what she did. A house taught Nevuar Felakahama. The wedding was small, quiet, and cold. There were no warm smiles from Arjun's side of the family, no blessings whispered with joy. Just polite, forced applause. And eyes that watched Meera like she was an intruder, who had somehow slipped past the gates. From the very first day, Meera stepped into that grand mansion. She understood something clearly. This was not going to be easy. Kamladevi never raised her voice. She didn't need to. Her cruelty came in quiet, calculated moments, the kind that leave scars nobody can see. She would introduce Meera to guests, not by her name but as Arjun's arrangement. She would comment on Meera's simple clothes in front of relatives, saying things like, "We must teach her how people from good families dress." Loud enough for Meera to hear, but soft enough to pretend it was innocent. At family dinners, Meera was often served last. Small things, but things that added up, day after day, month after month. Meera never complained. She remembered her mother's words. Never let anyone take your dignity. So instead of arguing, instead of breaking down in front of them, she simply worked harder to prove herself, helping in the family business, offering ideas to improve the textile export division, staying up late studying market trends to genuinely contribute. But no matter what she did, it was never enough. If she suggested an idea, Kamladevi would dismiss it in front of everyone, only to quietly pass the very same idea off as her own son's brilliant thinking weeks later. If she tried to bond with Arjun's younger sister, Priya, she was accused of trying too hard to fit in where she doesn't belong. Arjun, caught between his love for his wife and his fear of his mother, often stayed silent. He would comfort Meera behind closed doors, promising her things would get better, but in front of his family, he rarely defended her the way she needed him to. It was a slow, quiet kind of heartbreak, the kind that doesn't happen in one dramatic moment, but builds up drop by drop, day after day. Until one day you realize you've been drowning the whole time, and no one even noticed. There was one evening Meera would never forget. It was Priya's birthday, and the entire extended family had gathered at the mansion. Relatives from out of town, business partners, old family friends, everyone was there, dressed in their finest, laughing over expensive food. Meera had spent 2 days secretly helping Priya prepare for the event, arranging the decorations, personally choosing a gift she knew Priya would love, even helping the caterers coordinate the menu, because she genuinely enjoyed doing things for family, even a family that rarely appreciated her. When it was time for gifts, Kamladevi stood up in front of everyone and said, loud enough for the whole room to hear, "Priya, my darling, look at everything your brother and I arranged for your special day." Not once did she mention Meera's name. Not once did she acknowledge the late nights Meera had spent making sure everything was perfect. Meera stood quietly at the back of the room, smiling politely, swallowing the hurt the way she always did. Later that night, Priya, the only person in that house who occasionally showed Meera small kindnesses, found her alone in the garden. "I know what you did for today," Priya said softly. "Thank you." Meera simply nodded. "You don't have to thank me. I did it because I care about you." Priya hesitated, then added quietly, "I don't understand why my mother treats you this way. You've never done anything wrong." Meera looked up at the stars, took a deep breath, and said something that stayed with Priya for years to come. Some people need someone to feel superior to Priya. It has nothing to do with what I've done. It has everything to do with what they need to believe about themselves. It was one of the few honest conversations Mira ever had in that house. And it was proof that even in a family full of coldness, there could be one small flicker of understanding. But one flicker of kindness was not enough to change the storm that was coming. For 3 years, Mira endured all of this. She told herself it was temporary. She told herself that one day, they would see her worth. She told herself that patience and hard work always pay off in the end. She had no idea just how true and how painful those words would become. Because the worst betrayal was still coming. And it wasn't going to come from a stranger. It was going to come from someone she trusted completely. The betrayal. It happened during the biggest deal of the company's history, a partnership worth crores of rupees, with an international textile buyer. Mira had worked on the proposal for months in secret, refining every detail, building relationships with the buyer's team through late night calls and carefully written emails, hoping that when the deal succeeded, her father-in-law would finally acknowledge her contribution. The day the deal was finalized, the office was filled with celebration. Ram Mohan, genuinely impressed, stood up during the small gathering and said, "This success belongs to Mira. Her research, her planning, she made this happen." For one brief, beautiful moment, Mira felt seen. That moment did not last long. Kamla Devi's face turned pale, then red with anger, not because the company had succeeded, but because credit had gone to the one person she had spent 3 years trying to diminish. That night, she called Arjun into her room and said words that would change everything. "She is trying to take over this family's business, Arjun. Today it's credit for a deal. Tomorrow she will want control of everything. Open your eyes. She is not innocent. She is dangerous." It was a lie built entirely out of jealousy and fear, but Kamla Devi was skilled at planting doubt. Over the next few weeks, she twisted small moments into a larger story, telling Arjun that Mira had been secretly meeting with rival businessmen, that she was planning to leak company information, that she had married Arjun only to gain access to the family's wealth and status. None of it was true, but repeated enough times, lies can start to sound like facts. Arjun, exhausted, confused, and pressured constantly by his mother. Small cracks turned into a canyon. When Mira tried to talk to him directly, she started beside him and said, "Arjun." Small cracks turned into a canyon. One night, Mira tried to talk to him directly. She sat beside him and said, "Arjun, I feel like a stranger in my own marriage. Your mother says things about me, and you say nothing. Do you believe her? Or do you believe me?" Arjun looked away, unable to meet her eyes. "It's not that simple, Mira. She's my mother. And I'm your wife." Mira replied softly. "There has to be a place for both of us to matter to you." He didn't answer. He simply left the room, unable to face the truth of what silence was doing to the woman who had given up everything to build a life with him. Mira lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, wondering how much longer she could hold everything together on her own. She didn't know it yet, but she wouldn't have to wonder much longer. The final betrayal was only weeks away. Then came the final blow. One evening, important documents related to the company's new international contract went missing from Ram Mohan's office. Kamla Devi wasted no time. She stood in front of the entire family and accused Mira directly. "She has been planning this for months," she said, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. "She used this family to get close to our business, and now she has stolen from us." Mira stood frozen, stunned into silence. She had done nothing wrong. She hadn't even been near that office in days. But in that room, surrounded by people who already believed the worst of her innocence meant nothing. She looked at Arjun, silently begging him to defend her, the way she had defended herself against his mother's cruelty for 3 long years. He looked away. That single moment broke something in Mira that no insult, no cold dinner, no dismissive comment ever could. It wasn't the accusation that destroyed her. It was the silence of the one person who was supposed to stand by her no matter what. That same night, Kamla Devi told her clearly, "Pack your things. You will leave this house tonight, and you will never come back. If you try to fight this, we will make sure the whole business world knows you as a thief and a liar." Meera didn't argue. She didn't cry in front of them. She simply packed one small bag, the same size bag she had come with 3 years ago, and walked out into the night. Arjun didn't stop her. As she stepped through the gates of the mansion for what she thought would be the last time, she turned around just once and said quietly, "One day, you will understand what you lost tonight. Not because I will make you understand it. Life will." Nobody in that house believed her. They should have. Ephraim nota ing, Sheshbueltier retach ing. Meera had nowhere to go, no money of her own, and a reputation that had just been destroyed by lies. But she still had one thing nobody could take from her mind, and her mother's voice echoing inside it. "Never let anyone take your dignity." She went back to her mother's small house. Sunita didn't ask too many questions that first night. She simply held her daughter and let her cry the tears Meera had refused to shed in front of the family that broke her. The next morning, Meera woke up early, sat at the kitchen table, and made a decision that would change the rest of her life. She was done being underestimated. Using the knowledge she had gained from years of quietly studying the textile export business, she decided to start small, very small. She began by helping local weavers and small manufacturers connect with online buyers, cutting out expensive middlemen. She had no big office, no fancy team, just a laptop, a phone, and a plan. The first few months were brutally hard. She worked from a tiny rented room, often skipping meals to save money for basic business registration costs. Buyers doubted her. Suppliers questioned why they should trust an unknown woman with no company name behind her. Doors closed again and again. But Meera had already survived 3 years of being made to feel invisible. Rejection from strangers didn't scare her anymore. She had learned patience the hard way. Slowly, deal by deal, her reputation started to build, not because of who she was married to, not because of any family name, but because of her results. She delivered on promises. She was honest with clients. She treated small weavers with the same respect she gave to big international buyers. Within a year, her small operation had grown into a proper company. Within 2 years, that company had offices in 3 cities. She named it Sunita Textiles, after her mother, the one person who had believed in her when no one else did. By the 3rd year, Sunita Textiles wasn't just successful. It was becoming one of the most talked about names in ethical, sustainable textile exports in the entire country, known for fair wages to workers, honest business practices, and consistently excellent quality. Investors began reaching out to her. International buyers specifically requested to work with her company because of its reputation for reliability. Business magazines started writing about the quiet businesswoman who built an empire from nothing. Through all of this success, Meera never once used her past marriage as a story to gain sympathy or attention. She never spoke publicly about what had happened to her in that mansion. She simply worked with the same silent strength she had shown throughout her marriage, except now. That strength was building something entirely her own. There was one moment, about 1.5 years into building her company, that Meera almost gave up. A major client had backed out of a large order at the last minute, leaving her with warehouse stock she couldn't sell, and no money to pay the small team of weavers who depended on her for their wages. She sat alone in her tiny office late one night, staring at the numbers, feeling the same helplessness she had felt the night she was thrown out of the mansion. She called her mother, her voice breaking for the first time in months. "Ma, what if I fail? What if all of this was a mistake?" Sunita, calm as always, replied, "Meera, You didn't fail when they threw you out. You didn't fail when they lied about you. Failure is not a moment that happens to you. Failure is only real if you stop trying. Sleep tonight. Tomorrow, find one solution. Just one. The next morning, instead of giving up, Mira personally visited every small local market she could find, offering the stock at a fair discount directly to smaller retailers who couldn't normally afford to buy from big exporters. Within a week, she had recovered the loss and, more importantly, had built a dozen new small business relationships that would become loyal, long-term partners in the years ahead. It was a small moment in a much larger journey. But it taught her something she carried forward for the rest of her career. Every setback carries a hidden opportunity, if you're willing to look for it instead of running from it. Meanwhile, back at Arjun's family estate, things had taken a very different turn. The international contract that Mira had once helped secure had slowly started falling apart without her strategic guidance. New deals fell through due to poor planning. Competitors who had once been years behind were now moving ahead rapidly, offering better prices and better quality. Kamla Devi, so focused on control and appearances, had never actually understood the deeper details of the business the way Mira had. Within 4 years, the family's once thriving textile business was drowning in debt. Old partners had walked away. The bank was applying pressure. The mansion, the cars, the status Kamla Devi had guarded so fiercely, all of it was now hanging by a thread. They needed a miracle. They needed an investor who understood the textile export industry deeply, who had strong international buyer relationships, and who could rescue the business before it collapsed completely. Their finance consultant had been in talks for weeks with a highly respected, rapidly growing textile export company, one known throughout the industry for turning struggling businesses around through smart restructuring and strong buyer networks. The name of that company was Sunita Textiles. They had no idea who was behind it. The metinayang no oni sadudukamanayt. The day of the meeting arrived. The family had spent the entire morning preparing the mansion, trying to project an image of stability and success they no longer truly had. Kamla Devi personally supervised the decorations, insisting that the drawing room look impressive for their new investor. Ram Mohan, older now and visibly tired from years of stress, sat quietly reviewing the contract papers one final time. Arjun, now more withdrawn and reflective than the confident young man he once was, waited near the entrance, unaware that his entire world was about to shift. At exactly 4 p.m., a car pulled up outside the gates. The driver opened the door, and a woman stepped out dressed sharply in a simple, but powerful navy blue outfit, her hair neatly tied back, carrying herself with a quiet confidence that immediately commanded attention. It was Mira. For a moment, nobody in that house recognized her. 5 years had changed her. Not just her appearance, but the way she moved, the way she held her head high, the calm, unshakable presence she now carried. It was Priya, Arjun's younger sister, who noticed first. Her eyes widened, her hand slowly rising to cover her mouth in shock. "Mira," she whispered. The room fell into stunned silence. Kamla Devi's face went pale, the same way it had the night she accused Mira of theft years ago, except this time, there was no anger in her expression. Only fear. Ram Mohan stood up slowly, his eyes searching Mira's face, trying to process what was happening. And Arjun simply stared, frozen, unable to form a single word. Mira walked in calmly, greeted everyone with polite professionalism, exactly the way she would greet any business partner, and sat down across from them. "I understand you're looking for an investor to help restructure the business," she said, her voice steady. "And my company has reviewed your proposal in detail." Kamla Devi's voice trembled as she tried to regain composure. "Mira, you are the investor. You own Sunita Textiles." "I built Sunita Textiles," Mira replied simply. "From nothing. After I was thrown out of this house with a bag and a lie attached to my name." The room grew heavier with every word. Ram Mohan, visibly emotional, spoke first. Mira, I never truly believed the accusations. I should have said something back then. I'm sorry. Mira nodded gently. She had expected this moment for years, imagined it in different ways. But now that it was actually happening, she felt something unexpected, not anger, not the urge for revenge, but a strange, calm sense of closure. I'm not here for apologies, she said. I'm here because your company reached out to my company for a business partnership. I run Sunita Textiles based on merit, honesty, and results, not personal history. Kamla Devi, still struggling to process the situation, tried one last attempt at control. Surely, given our family connection, we can discuss more favorable terms. Mira looked at her directly, the same calm look she had given her the night she was forced to leave. There is no family connection anymore, Kamla Devi. There is only a business deal. And in this deal, the terms will be based on fairness, transparency, and merit, the very things that were never offered to me in this house. The silence that followed said everything. Priya, who had remained quiet through most of the meeting, finally spoke, her voice trembling with a mixture of guilt and admiration. Mira, all these years, you never once tried to contact us, not even to tell us what you had built. Why? Mira turned to her gently. Out of everyone in that room, Priya was the only one she still felt warmth for. Because I didn't build Sunita Textiles to prove something to this family, Priya. I built it to prove something to myself. What you're seeing today isn't revenge walking through that door. It's 5 years of work that had nothing to do with any of you. Priya's eyes filled with tears. I always believed you were innocent. I should have said something back then. I was scared of my mother too. I know, Mira said softly. And I don't blame you for being young and afraid. But I hope, watching this, you learn something important, that fear should never be stronger than fairness. No matter who is standing in front of you. The room stayed heavy with emotion, but for the first time in years, there was something else in the air besides fear and control. There was honesty. JSTSE, now to Rivian. Over the following weeks, Mira's company conducted a full financial review of the family's textile business. The findings confirmed what many had suspected quietly for years: mismanagement, poor decision making driven by ego rather than strategy, and a stubborn refusal to modernize outdated business practices. Mira had every reason to walk away. She had every justification to let the business collapse entirely. To let Kamla Devi lose everything the way she had once tried to take everything from her. But Mira remembered something important through all of this: the difference between revenge and justice. Revenge would have meant destroying them simply to satisfy old wounds. Justice meant giving people what they truly deserved, based on fairness, not emotion. So Mira made her decision. She agreed to invest in the company and help restructure it, but under strict, professional conditions. The business would be run based on transparent management practices. Ram Mohan, who had quiet integrity despite his past silence, was allowed to remain involved in an advisory capacity. Arjun, humbled and changed by everything that had happened, was given a chance to prove himself, starting in a much smaller operational role, earning responsibility step by step rather than simply inheriting it. As for Kamla Devi, Mira made one condition absolutely clear during a private meeting. You once told me I would never belong in respectable society, Mira said calmly. I'm not here to prove you wrong through anger. I'm here to prove that hard work, honesty, and patience will always outlast cruelty and pride. If you want this business to survive, you will need to accept guidance, real guidance, not ego-driven decisions. Kamla Devi, faced with the reality of losing everything she had spent her life building around status and appearance, had no choice but to accept. Slowly, over the following months, the business began to stabilize. But something else began to change too, something nobody expected. Kamla Devi, humbled by everything she had lost and everything Mira had built without any help from her, began slowly, imperfectly to change. It wasn't a sudden transformation. Old habits and pride don't disappear overnight. But small moments started appearing. A quiet acknowledgement of a good business decision, an admission during a family dinner that she had been wrong about many things over the years. Arjun, given time to reflect deeply on his past silence, reached out to Meera personally one evening, not to ask for reconciliation as husband and wife, but simply to apologize sincerely for the pain his silence had caused. "I should have stood by you," he said. "I let fear control me instead of love. I understand if you can never forgive that." Meera listened quietly. She didn't offer false comfort, and she didn't offer bitterness either. "I've made peace with what happened," she said. "Not because it didn't hurt, but because I refused to let it define the rest of my life. That peace is what allowed me to build everything I have now." Their marriage was never restored in the traditional sense. Some wounds, even when healed, leave a mark that changes what a relationship can be. But a strange, respectful understanding developed between them, built on honesty rather than the false image they once tried to maintain. There was one particular afternoon, almost 8 months after Meera's return, that stayed with everyone who witnessed it. During a routine business review at the office, one of the younger staff members made a mistake in a client report. In the past, Kamla Devi would have scolded the employee harshly in front of everyone, more concerned with appearances than understanding. Instead, she paused, took a breath, and said calmly, "Mistakes happen. Let's fix it together and make sure we learn from it." Then she looked toward Meera, almost seeking quiet approval. The way a student looks toward a teacher. Meera simply gave a small nod and returned to her own work. She didn't need an apology spoken out loud in that moment. She could see the change happening in real time, one small decision after another. It wasn't forgiveness built on empty words. It was respect built on actions, the only kind of change that ever truly means something. Lessons Chi left TBHI, and a year later, Meera stood on a stage at a national business summit, invited to speak about resilience in entrepreneurship. Hundreds of young business owners sat in the audience, many of them women who had faced their own struggles, their own moments of being underestimated. She didn't talk about the mansion. She didn't talk about the accusations or the betrayal in detail. Instead, she shared one simple message. One that came from everything she had lived through. There will be people in your life who try to define your worth based on where you come from, how much money you have, or how loudly you can defend yourself in a room full of critics, she said. But your worth was never something they had the power to decide. It was always yours to build, quietly, patiently, one honest decision at a time. She looked out at the audience, her voice steady and calm. "I was once told I would never belong in a certain kind of world. I believed, for a long time, that proving them wrong meant becoming loud, becoming aggressive, becoming someone who fights fire with fire. But real strength isn't about revenge. It's about building something so solid, so honest, and so true to who you are, that eventually, the truth speaks louder than any lie ever could." The room fell silent, then rose into applause. Because everyone in that room, in their own way, understood exactly what she meant. Meera's story isn't just about a rich family who rejected a woman for not having enough money. It's about every person who has ever been made to feel small by people who were supposed to lift them up. It's about every quiet worker who was never given credit for their ideas. It's about every family member who was judged unfairly. And every person who chose patience over bitterness, and hard work over hatred. The family that once threw her out with nothing eventually needed her more than she ever needed them. But the true victory wasn't in that moment of shock on their faces, when they realized who she had become. The true victory was in who she had become on the inside, a woman who faced betrayal, humiliation, and heartbreak, And instead of letting it destroy her, let it build her into someone unshakable. So if there is one thing to take from Mira's story, let it be this. Never let someone else's cruelty define your worth. Never let rejection convince you that you are not enough. And never seek revenge just to make others feel small instead. Seek growth, so strong and so genuine, that one day, the same people who doubted you will have no choice but to see the truth. Because in the end, the best response to those who underestimated you is simply becoming undeniable. Think about the people in your own life who told you that you weren't good enough, a boss who never noticed your effort, a family member who compared you to someone else, a friend who walked away when things got hard. It's easy to spend years carrying anger toward them. It's easy to imagine the day you'll finally prove them wrong in some loud, dramatic way. But Mira's story teaches something quieter, something more powerful. The real proof isn't in a single dramatic moment, it's in the thousands of small, unseen moments before it, the late nights, the small failures you don't give up after, the discipline you keep even when no one is watching or clapping for you. Kamla Devi didn't change because Mira humiliated her the way she had once humiliated Mira. She changed because she was finally forced to face the truth of her own actions, standing in front of the very success she once tried to destroy. That is the difference between bitterness and growth. One destroys everyone involved, while the other quietly rebuilds what was broken, without needing to break anyone else in the process. So if somebody in your life made you feel small today, do not spend your energy trying to make them feel small in return. Spend it building something so real, so honest, and so undeniably yours, that one day, without you saying a single word, they will understand exactly what they lost. If this story touched you, if it reminded you of your own strength during a difficult time in your life, remember this: your patience today is building your power tomorrow. Thank you for watching till the end. If you believe someone deserves to hear this story, share it with them. And if you want more stories about resilience, betrayal, and quiet strength that turns into unstoppable power, stay with us. There are many more stories waiting to be told.